Coming up, over 14 million deaths around the world were caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. New figures from the World Health Organization says the 2-year global health crisis caused direct and indirect fatalities. Some 200 civilians are still stuck underground at a steel plant in Mariupol amid heavy explosions by Russian forces. That's despite Moscow saying it would allow them to leave safely. The United Nations says it's working on a new mission to evacuate them. Seoul and Washington reaffirmed their ironclad alliance against threats to regional stability. In a phone call between defense chiefs, the US renewed its commitment to defend the South with a full range of US military capabilities, including extended deterrence.
Hello and welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's Friday, May 6th, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea, and I'm Lee Seung-jae.
And I'm Young. Thanks as always for joining us this morning, because over the next hour we'll be giving you the biggest headlines of the day and experts' insights on some of the key issues facing Korea and the rest of the world. The World Health Organization believes almost 15 million people around the world have died from complications linked to COVID-19 over the past 2 years.
That's right, and the figure given out by the WHO on Thursday is nearly triple the official death toll. The agency's data shows Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas accounted for most of the fatalities. Ji-young has our top story.
Nearly 15 million deaths around the world associated with COVID-19. This is according to the World Health Organization's estimate released on Thursday that about 14.9 million people died as a direct or indirect result of the virus between January 2020 and December 2021. Considering the world population of roughly 7.9 billion, around 1 out of every 500 people died globally.
So this estimate ranges from 13.3 million to 16.6 million. There were 5.4 million reported COVID-19 deaths to WHO over this period. So this excess estimate represents 9.5 million more deaths, or 2.75 times more deaths than reported.
The head of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, described the figure as sobering, adding the figure shows countries the need to invest more in their ability to be flexible when dealing with health emergencies. The WHO said middle-income countries accounted for over 80% of the estimated deaths. 82% of the deaths were in people 60 and over. 57% were men and 43% women. It added about 84% of the deaths were concentrated in Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas. According to the WHO's weekly COVID-19 tally report from April 25th to May 1st, the number of new infections stood at around 3.9 million, down 17% on week. However, the figure increased by 31% in Africa and by 13% in the Americas due to variants. The U.S. on Wednesday also surpassed the grim milestone of 1 million COVID-related deaths. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Moscow says it's prepared to provide safe passage for civilians trapped at a steel plant in Mariupol. This comes as the UN chief confirmed that a third operation is underway to help civilians safely evacuate from the city. Kim Yo-sun has more.
Russia says it is still ready to provide safe evacuation for civilians from the Azovstal steelworks in the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol. According to the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett held a phone call Thursday to exchange their views on the situation in Ukraine. Putin explained that Ukraine should order the troops defending the steel plant to lay down their arms. Scores of Ukrainian civilians, including women and children, remain trapped in underground bunkers at the steel facility. This comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he has spoken to the chief of the United Nations to discuss evacuating Ukrainians from Mariupol.
I spoke today with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on what has already been accomplished, about what else we can do to protect the people of Mariupol and the defenders of the city. There was not a single day that I was not working on it, that we were not working on it, and I'm grateful to everyone who helps.
He further explained that 344 civilians were evacuated from the city on Thursday. Meanwhile, the UN chief told the UN Security Council Thursday that a third operation is underway to help evacuate civilians from Mariupol. He declined to provide details on the new operation to avoid undermining possible success. Against his backdrop, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson discussed the possibility of supplying longer-range weaponry to Ukraine with his Ukrainian counterpart. In a call on Thursday, the two leaders discussed developments on the battlefield as well as the needs of Ukraine's armed forces. Kim Hye-sun, Arirang News.
The US Federal Reserve introduced its biggest interest rate hike in 22 years. Now, this stirred a massive sell-off of US stocks, with the Dow falling 3.1%, the S&P 500 3.6%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq faring worst, losing 5% on Thursday. Now, worries continue over how rising prices will affect economic growth. Kim Dami brings us the updates.
The Federal Reserve on Wednesday raised its benchmark overnight interest rate by 0.5 percentage point in a bid to tame inflation. It's the biggest hike in 22 years. In a widely expected move, the Fed set its target federal funds rate to a range between 0.75% and 1% in a unanimous decision.
It is essential that we bring inflation down if we are to have a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. The labor market is extremely tight and inflation is much too high.
Following Wednesday's rate hike, U.S. stocks ended sharply higher, with the S&P 500 advancing almost 3%, its strongest since May 2020. The central bank also noted that starting next month, it will also begin reducing asset holdings on its $9 trillion balance sheet accumulated during the pandemic. While stressing the Fed's commitment to bring inflation down, the Fed chair, however, added a possible rate increase of as much as 0.75 percentage points is now being considered. The Bank of Korea on Thursday said the latest rate hike is in line with the market expectations, pointing out the possibility of increase of volatility in the financial market due to high inflation in the U.S., as well as the prospect of a further 0.5 percentage point hike by the Fed. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
Now, in the meantime, the Bank of England has hiked its key interest rate to a 13-year high in a move aimed at tackling inflation, of course, fueled by high energy prices, the war in Ukraine, and lingering concerns about the pandemic. Now, the bank's Monetary Policy Committee voted 6-3 to lift the rate by 0.25 percentage point to 1%. Now, this is the Bank of England's fourth consecutive rate hike and comes with inflation in the UK running at 30-year highs. It also comes a day after the Federal Reserve announced its single biggest rate increase in over 2 decades, signaling that more are on the way. Now, the OPEC Plus on Thursday agreed to another modest monthly oil output increase, saying the producer group could not be blamed for disruption to Russian supply, while adding China's COVID-19 lockdowns threatened the outlook for demand. Now, ignoring demands from Western nations to make significant output increases, the group instead agreed to raise its June production target by 432,000 barrels per day. Now, the output is in line with an existing plan to unwind curbs put in place in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic hampered demand.
Ukraine and Russia are considered the world's breadbaskets, being major producers of wheat. And the ongoing conflict between them is triggering strong concern over a global supply shortage. Kim Do-yeon has more.
With no end to the war in Ukraine in sight, countries are moving fast to either secure wheat supplies or gain global market share for their crops, as Ukraine's production is hit hard. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, around 50 countries import 30% of their wheat from either Russia or Ukraine, with some countries importing up to 60%. According to the Wall Street Journal, Russia, despite sanctions, has been able to export its wheat to some countries, and while Ukraine has struggled to bring its crops to market, Russia has gained ground. Citing AgFlow, a Switzerland-based crop data firm, the paper said Egypt's wheat imports from Russia grew 580% in March from a year ago, adding exports to Iran, Turkey, and Libya all more than doubled. Other countries are also increasing their market share, with countries trying to gain new supply lines. Exports from other grain-producing countries on the Black Sea, such as Bulgaria and Romania, also grew in March, according to the firm, with wheat shipments from South American countries including Brazil and Argentina more than doubling, while those from Australia rose nearly 75%. Governments around the world are working to make up for lost grain supplies. In March, Ireland launched a nearly $11 million program to encourage farmers to grow more crops such as wheat, oats, and barley, hoping to reduce that country's dependence on imported grain. The Biden administration last week asked Congress for $500 million to help boost U.S. crop production in an effort to make up for global shortfalls. However, the Wall Street Journal reported that with the amount of production that Ukraine was responsible for, along with massive acreage usually utilized, it will be impossible to make up the shortage despite global efforts. 김도현, Arirang News.
Now, a day after North Korea launched a ballistic missile, the defense chiefs of South Korea and the United States held phone talks on Thursday evening and reaffirmed strong alliance. Now, South Korea's defense minister Seoul and his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin criticized Wednesday's launch, calling it a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. They also agreed that the move threatens peace and security on both the Korean Peninsula and in the Indo-Pacific region. The two officials decided to closely cooperate to enhance their combined defense posture. Now, South Korea has become the first Asian country to join the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence. The nation's top intel agency signaled its intention to become a member in 2019 and has taken part in the world's largest cybersecurity training exercise ran by the center, known as Locked Shields, for 2 years since 2020. Now, the NIS will participate in a variety of joint training exercises and research to strengthen its cyber response capabilities. The CCDCOE was established in May 2008 after Estonia was paralyzed by Russian cyber attacks in 2007. Now, 32 countries, including 5 non-NATO nations, are members of the center.
Welcome to Dialogue This Week. In this corner, we invite guests from in and out of Korea to talk about a wide variety of issues ranging from culture and sports to the latest societal trends around the world. Now, International Children's Day was first proclaimed in Geneva during the World Conference on Child back in 1926. And this annual commemorative day celebrated in the honour of children is observed on May 5th here in South Korea. And since the 1970s, the day has been marked as an official public holiday, reaching its 100th anniversary this year. Now, today we look to get some perspective on how children's rights are being addressed not only here in South Korea, but also in other parts of the world, particularly war-struck Ukraine, where more than 7.5 million children need emergency aid, as well as other amenities and basic needs in this time of conflict. To discuss this issue, we're joined by James Elder, UNICEF Global Spokesperson in Ukraine, and Bang Myung-hee, Senior Manager of Policy and Advocacy at Save the Children Korea. Very warm welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Elder, particularly joining us all the way from Ukraine. Thank you for making time for us under such dire circumstances. And well, to begin with, a question for you really. Now, we want to first address what this international pact adopted in 1989 was all about. It was adopted to ensure every right for every child, called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. So what were the basic rights that world leaders back then agreed to protect?
Look, that convention from 1989, the Convention of the Rights of the Child, is the most important convention I think we've ever seen. It's certainly the most ratified by countries around the globe in every corner, and it speaks to a commitment to children. It speaks to a commitment to protect their health, to protect their safety, to ensure that they have education, to protect their right to play. Across the board, it protects their right to be children, to grow up safely, to be vaccinated, to be healthy, to be given every opportunity. And in a lot of ways it sounds so obvious to your viewers, but of course it hasn't always been this way. So these past 10 decades have been incredibly important in protecting the rights of children, in protecting their safety. Now, we're not seeing that right now in Ukraine, but we can come to that later. But these have been incredible advancements in the protection of children, in their defense of their health, of their education, of their ability to be the next adults, of their ability to be the next citizens. They are, of course, our greatest resource. This Convention of the Rights of the Child attempts to ensure that these next citizens are given every opportunity to grow and to contribute to their societies.
Now, Ms. Park, this year actually marks the 100th anniversary of South Korea celebrating Children's Day. And of course, we often overlook Children's Day as a single day to make time for children, to give them gifts. And well, the idea behind this day being a national holiday is to enable their guardians to spend time with their children. But well, where does South Korea first stand in terms of progress in children's rights being protected?
So as all we know, Korea has made significant progress in matters of rights to live and rights to develop. However, the quality of life of children still has a lot to be improved. According to the recent survey result of Save the Children and Seoul National University, which is a comparative study to show the level of happiness of 10-year-olds, Korea ranked only 31st out of 35 countries. We had key findings that Korean children reported quite low self-satisfaction, low satisfaction with learning, not enough safe environment, and lack of sense of control to their time use. It turned out that competitive educational environment was a key factor that hindered most children to recognize themselves positive and prevent them to use their time in a more proactive way. This study showed clearly what aspects that determine life satisfaction of children. And I believe that it is time for us to voice for the rights of children more than just fulfilling material conditions. Also, according to the annual survey conducted by the National Center for the Rights of the Child, the rate of response of whether their rights being respected has been decreased. For example, there is a phenomenon in Korea, No Kids Zone, which is banning children to enter the restaurants or cafes. Moreover, there are some discriminatory languages such as 주린이, 유린이, and 초딩, which are commonly used daily basis to describe little children or somebody who is not skilled enough to make fun of them, which shows how our society is treating children as being immature, and not being good enough at anything. It is necessary to reconsider the purpose of proclaiming Children's Day 100 years ago and whether we treat children with dignity.
And now, Mr. Elder, now we want to really address this ongoing war in Ukraine and how it's been displacing people, but the most vulnerable people are often children, of course, and now some 7.5 million children in Ukraine, they've been impacted by the war. And first, can you outline for us what the biggest dangers are for children right now in such times of war?
The biggest dangers for children in Ukraine still are about survival. Hundreds of children have been killed in this war. And that's because These days it seems that children are on the front lines, that there's heavy weaponry consistently used in civilian areas. We see attacks on schools, on health clinics, on places that children should be safe, playgrounds at home, and they're not. So first and foremost, still we see children killed. Then, of course, UNICEF is so concerned because there's such an enormous number of children affected. We're talking almost 2 in 3 children in Ukraine have been displaced, 2 in 3, mostly under bombardment, have had to flee their homes, the safety of what was their family home, usually farewelling their father, going somewhere else, the stress, the strain, the danger. That's an enormous threat to children, and it continues day in, day out for boys and girls across Ukraine.
And Ms. Park, now, how does a humanitarian aid organisation like Save the Children reach out in such circumstances of war? I mean, what children's emergency aid programmes do you have to help the children in Ukraine right now?
Since 2014, Save the Children have responded to the conflict emergency by delivering essential humanitarian aid to children and their families in Ukraine. In response to the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, we have launched our response in Ukraine and in neighboring countries, including Poland and Romania, right after the beginning of the onset of the war. We are providing life-saving assistance such as food, water, fast transfers, and safe places for children as people flee the conflict. We are responding through our partners where they can in Ukraine and will continue for as long as it is safe and possible to do so.
And Mr. Alder, now what kind of support is being provided on the ground for the safety, stability and protection of the children that continue to be killed, wounded and not to mention severely traumatised by all the violence?
UNICEF support is really far-reaching. It's everything from medical supplies to hospitals and clinics. That might be first aid kits, it might be resuscitation, it might be obstetric kits, because women have to have babies in bunkers. It's emergency nutrition supply, it's water, be it bottles of water like I saw yesterday for evacuees coming out of the bunkers in Mariupol, or trying to repair water systems to bring back water to, many thousands of people. It's about counselling. It's about helping children get through the trauma. It's about education care. It's about online support for children. So it really does cover all avenues. It's frontline support across this country. Obviously that's dangerous. Obviously that's difficult, but that's what UNICEF does.
And Ms. Park, how can South Korea help the children of Ukraine? How can we do our part?
Yeah, the important thing to help the children in Ukraine is to have awareness of the vulnerable population, including children who are suffering from the conflict. We are gravely concerned that the current escalation in the conflict will cause more misery for our children in Ukraine by depriving them of their rights to be educated, be healthy, and stay with their family. We have to keep our eyes on the situation and condemn attacks on civilians, especially on children. Also, it would be great to support humanitarian agencies like us, Save the Children, so we can continue to act quickly in times of crisis to get children and their families what they need.
And Mr. Alder, well, we unfortunately cannot say that the end to this war is in sight, but when the violence does end, what kind of efforts need to be made to protect families and children? What can we do to help?
Yes, indeed, it's so true. From day one, from the United Nations Secretary General, UNICEF's Executive Director, it's been a perpetual call, stop the war. Enough of the attacks, there must be a sustainable peace. But in the interim, while that's not happening, yes, UNICEF continues to work night and day across all corners to the edges of front lines to reach all those people impacted. And when peace does come, there'll be a huge reconstruction effort. We've seen so many attacks on schools, hundreds of schools, more than 100 health facilities and various healthcare areas damaged, destroyed. Water has continually been attacked. All those things are going to need to be rebuilt, whilst at the same time we seek to rebuild the lives of children, bring families home, help them start again, try and address the trauma of children to let them know that they once again can play, that a playground is safe, that a school is safe, that all those places that no longer are safe for them, can they have the trust again in this world that they won't be thrown back into a war. So there's an enormous amount of work to do right now, day to day, life-saving work for children that UNICEF does across the country. And then, of course, on this wonderful moment, whenever that is, when there is peace, there'll be a huge effort. I've not spoken to anyone outside of this country, anyone when I spent days and days at train stations as people fled, haven't spoken to anyone who wanted to leave their country. They all want to come home. And that will be so important for those families to come back, to stop the brain drain out of Ukraine. That will happen with peace.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up the conversation here today. But of course, the conversation on how we can protect our children doesn't stop. That was James Elder, UNICEF Global Spokesperson, joining us from Ukraine, and Bang Young-hee, Senior Manager of Policy and Advocacy at Save the Children Korea. Thank you both so much for your time and your insights today.
Thank you.
Now, with the weather warming up, Jeju Island is seeing the number of domestic and international visitors rise. And while tourists certainly do help the local economy vibrant, they're also contributing to an increase in daily waste on the island. Kim Hyun-sung went to Jeju Island to dig deeper into this very problem.
With masks off and group tours back on, more tourists are expected to flock to Jeju Island to enjoy this crisp beach breeze and this glistening blue sea. But while they'll be taking away treasured memories, they'll also be leaving behind heaps of trash. Jeju Island's local government estimates that more than 40% of daily waste is made up of trash discarded by tourists. Their research shows that there were more than 1,150 tons of trash a day in March last year. The amount of trash has increased by more than 15 tons per day compared to the year before. This makes sense considering the number of tourists also spiked that season with a steep 85.8% on-year increase.
When COVID-19 first broke out and there was a steep decline in the number of tourists, we saw less daily trash. Also, it's true that trash thrown away by tourists is not sorted and recycled properly.
The burden caused by this waste may increase, with Jeju Island expecting another wave of tourists this year. Naver, a popular search tool in South Korea, saw Jeju Island-related search terms like Jeju Island plane tickets, Jeju tours, and Jeju hotels climb in recent months, hinting at growing interest in Jeju tourism. Jeju-related Google searches also showed a spike over the past year.
If visitors properly sort their trash when they come, it would help a lot. If we burn less trash, there will be less carbon. On Jeju Island, there are 2 places where you can sort your trash, at a so-called clean house and at recycling help centres.
Clean houses are ordinary recycling bins for pedestrians, and there are about 1,500 of them sprawled across the island. But instead of these bins, Jeju Island is working on increasing the number of recycling help centers, where visitors can easily sort trash with the assistance of one of the center's helpers.
If the visitors bring in trash like a plastic bottle, I weigh the trash and help them sort it in the right bins. If there's nobody here, people just throw away trash any way they like.
These centers are located close to popular tourist spots. So when tourists visit the island, they can look for one and leave their trail as crisp and clean as they found it. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News, Jeju Island.
Now, with more than 15 million people raising pets here in South Korea, demand for related services are also peaking at record highs. Now, these range from hotels to beauty salons. Now, Lee Dae-hyun has more on the evolution of the so-called petconomy.
Pets are more than just animals. They are companions and even seen as family members by many people in South Korea.
As a cat owner, I'm glad that more people are perceiving pets as family members.
It's interesting how pet-related services are becoming more diverse.
Data released by South Korea's KB Financial Group Research Institute shows that there were more than 6 million households with a pet in 2020. In line with that trend, the Korea Rural Economic Institute reported that the value of the pet industry was over $2.7 billion in 2020, up $1.1 billion compared to 5 years before. It also expected that the market will expand to more than $4.7 billion in 2027. And with this surge, the pet industry is also evolving in many ways as more businesses release products and services targeting pets. Hotels and resorts are introducing pet rooms, which allow guests to bring their pets and enjoy vacations with them. One resort even provides a variety of pet services, such as a pet school.
With the number of single-person households increasing in South Korea, more pet owners are looking for pet schools where their pets can be looked after when they're not around.
By attending pet schools, pets can learn how to socialize with other animals and people while enjoying regular physical activities with professional trainers. Pet beauty shops are also getting a lot of attention from pet owners. Experts carefully examine the animal's skin and fur in order to provide them with the best styling and even spa care services. Some cosmetic companies are also expanding their businesses to pet industry. One company has developed a range of products for pets, including a body mist, a facial mask pack, and even an ear cleaner.
We listen to consumers' needs, like what they want for pet products. Our priority is safety, so that's why we focus on ingredients when making beauty products for pets.
Dubbed the petconomy, a combination of the word pet and economy, experts say this trend is likely to continue.
Pet humanization is a new phenomenon in South Korea. As more people tend to perceive pets as family members, the pet industry is forecasted to develop further.
He added more services like nursing homes for pets could be introduced as well as the life expectancy of animals rises. Lee Hyun, Arirang News.
The demand for delivery and takeout food has soared in the last couple of years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And this has increased the amount of recyclable trash, but it's also raised awareness of recycling as businesses and local governments lead new recycling campaigns. Yoonjin has this story.
Like most coffee shops, this cafe in Seoul's Hongdong-gu district produces piles of waste coffee grounds. Just at this coffee shop, we're looking at around 200 kilograms per month. It gets collected for recycling. Some 2,000 kilograms of coffee grounds from 25 cafes are collected and taken to this recycling factory where it is transformed into a completely new product. The coffee waste makes up 20% of this plastic synthetic resin mixture. The plastic is used to make furniture, which helps lower carbon dioxide emissions.
Currently, only used coffee bean waste is being collected, but we're looking to expand so that other disposable waste like cups and straws can be collected together.
Here in Gangdong-gu district, in front of a local community center, there's a place for ice packs. The used ice packs are collected and disinfected, then made like new and distributed to stores. Only gel-type ice packs that are made with microplastics are reused. Just last year, some 72,000 ice packs were recycled, cutting carbon emissions by 25 tons.
We are reusing ice packs, and we're also running other environmental campaigns, including turning the ice packs into air fresheners.
For stores that have been using more ice packs due to the rise in demand for deliveries and takeout food, this system of reusing ice packs has also been of great financial help.
Each of these ice packs costs 16 to 24 US cents. Say we use over 100 a day, that really adds up for us.
Individual efforts to protect the environment are growing, but even more awareness and action needs to be taken towards recycling. Such small actions can lead to a bigger change in the future. Yoonjin, Arirang News.
They say prevention is better than cure, and that's especially true when it comes to gas leaks at major facilities. A group of Korean researchers are hoping to put a stop to any such related mishaps at industrial plants. Cho Sung-min introduces us to the system being developed.
A group of South Korean researchers have developed a type of technology that can detect gas leaks at industrial compounds. Composed of multiple layers of nanofibers, the small metallic sheet changes color to black once it enters a glass container full of hydrochloric acid. This time, the white sheet turned yellow when exposed to a different type of gas. According to the developers, the sheets are coated with special nanofibers highly reactive to specific gases.
We developed this sensor by integrating color-changing pigments to a nanofiber sheet as thin as a 200th of a hair strand. With the relatively large area that the fibers can cover, they can detect even a small amount of gas.
The sensors also consist of key materials used to prevent gas leaks at semiconductor and display plants. For the most optimal results, a set of sensors must be installed on each gas pipe, with each serving different purposes. The first sensor would monitor the fiber's color every 10 seconds, while the other would reassess the status of the gas and send a signal to the central monitoring system once it detects a leak. When leaks occur, the sensors are designed to open up a valve to house the toxic gas inside an empty container, thus preventing any fatal accidents.
Our color-sensing nanofiber is embedded inside a safety device that prevents gas leaks, which helps detect potential leaks in advance.
As gas leak-related incidents have taken their toll on South Korean chip and display plants, the new fiber sensors are seen as a reliable safeguard that can reduce accidents moving forward. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
For a look at news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang newsroom. Good morning.
Good morning to you guys.
Good morning to you, Matthew. Let's kind of start things off with Israel, where a fatal attack has taken place in the central city of Eilat.
Right. At least 3 people were killed and 2 seriously injured on Thursday as the country celebrated its Independence Day. According to witness testimonies, the attackers reportedly used axes. With the perpetrators still at large, Eilat's mayor urged residents to stay indoors while security forces, who suspect Palestinian involvement, set up roadblocks to catch the attackers. Now, Israel and the West Bank has seen a spate of street attacks in recent weeks, with Palestinian and members of Israel's Arab minority responsible for the deaths of 15 people, including 3 police officers and a security guard. Now moving on to New York, as hundreds of pro-abortion rights activists gathered in the city's Union Square on Thursday. Mainly comprised of students, the protests form part of a national walkout organized by the not-for-profit group Rise Up for Abortion Rights. This comes as a verified leaked draft opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court showed that a majority of justices are prepared to overturn the 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling that legalized abortion nationwide. Many wore green, symbolizing abortion rights, while brandishing protest signs and chanting. This follows a rally on Tuesday in Lower Manhattan, where thousands of people gathered to protest following the leak. In Iraq, a series of dust storms in the country has resulted in thousands of citizens requiring hospital treatment. Health officials on Thursday said the latest storm in Baghdad saw at least 3,000 people seek medical assistance for breathing problems. The country has experienced an increasing number of dust, sand, and windstorms in recent years, including several in recent weeks. Iraq's summers are also getting hotter, hitting record temperatures of at least 52 degrees Celsius over the last 2 years. Drought is also becoming a problem, with 2020 to 2021's rainy season the second driest in 40 years, according to the United Nations. Elon Musk has secured over $7.14 billion in funding for his $44 billion takeover of Twitter. According to a U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filing on Thursday, the Tesla CEO earned financial support from a number of investors, including Oracle founder Larry Ellison and cryptocurrency exchange Binance. Saudi Arabia's Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, who initially opposed the buyout, agreed to pitch in $1.9 billion. The filing also showed that Musk's margin loan for the buyout has been reduced from $12.5 billion to $6.25 billion. There's speculation that Musk will serve as Twitter's temporary CEO for a few months once the deal closes. The 2022 FIFA World Cup will kick off in just 200 days, and the famous World Cup trophy has started touring across Qatar to mark the countdown. The trophy began its 5-day journey on Thursday to various tourist hotspots where fans and families can take part in soccer-related activities and snap pictures. Qatar will be the first Muslim state to host the World Cup, and for the first time, the tournament will be held in the Northern Hemisphere in winter. The Gulf state is also the smallest country to host the event, with fans from around 32 competing nations watching games at 8 stadiums around the capital, Doha.
Good morning. Most areas had fine weather on Children's Day yesterday. Not to mention traffic on the major highways yesterday was even heavier than this year's Seoul holiday. Well, today's forecast seems to be a repeat of Thursday, a breezy start turning into early summer-like conditions. Meanwhile, the dry weather advisory remains in place in parts of the East Coast, while mountainous regions in Jeju will see light spotty rain in the late afternoon. Normal to good air quality will be welcomed by all of us today. Morning fog in the west inland regions this morning, so please drive with care, and a double-digit start for most parts of the country today. Then highs will be similar to yesterday, so we're going up to 25 degrees. Gyeongju topping out at 28 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And there will be more clouds than yesterday, but UV rays will be as strong. Light rain is in the forecast across Korea on Saturday, and it's going to be rather cloudy with a brief cool down on this year's Parents' Day and Buddha's birthday this Sunday. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that's going to wrap up our newscast for this morning, but we will be back next week for our Monday's edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thanks ever so much for starting the morning with us, and please do tune in for more updates throughout the day. Have a lovely weekend wherever you are. Goodbye.